The diplomatic quarters aboard the Zenith station hummed with the gentle rhythm of life support systems. In one wing, the Krath delegation occupied their assigned chambers, their massive frames requiring specially reinforced furniture and double-wide doorways. In another, the human contingent settled into their comparatively modest rooms, blissfully unaware that the galaxy's most feared apex predators were their neighbors. Marshal Chen had been assigned a room near the center of the human section. At 23, he was the youngest xenobiologist on the diplomatic mission, brought along primarily to study interspecies interactions. His quarters were simple: a bed, a desk cluttered with data, and a small viewport showing the swirling nebula beyond the station. He'd fallen asleep, reviewing notes about the Krath 8-foot-tall bipedal beings covered in silver-black fur, with retractable claws that could shred titanium alloy and fangs designed for their homeworld's megafauna. They were warriors, hunters, the apex predators of their planet. Every species in the galactic community gave them a wide berth, every species except humans, apparently, who'd walked into first contact with handshakes and badly pronounced greetings. Marshall didn't hear the door's security override at 300 hours. He didn't notice the small shadow that crept across his floor, or the soft whimpering that preceded it. What finally woke him was the sensation of something warm and trembling pressing against his back. His eyes snapped open. Years of camping in grisly country back on Earth had taught him one crucial rule: stay calm when you wake up with a predator nearby. He controlled his breathing and slowly turned his head. A Krath cub, no more than 4 feet tall, had crawled into his bed. Even in the dim light, Marshall could see the kit was young, maybe the equivalent of a human 5-year-old. Its fur was fluffier than the adult's, patterned with spots that would fade with maturity. The cub's eyes were squeezed shut, and it was making small, distressed sounds. Marshall's scientific mind kicked into gear even as his heart hammered. This was Ambassador Krell's daughter Zira. He'd seen her earlier that day, hiding behind her father's leg during the initial meet and greet. She'd been curious about the humans, her large amber eyes tracking their movements with fascination. Now those eyes were wet with tears. "Hey," Marshall whispered softly, the same tone he'd use with a frightened animal. "Hey, it's okay." Zira's eyes opened, wide and luminous in the darkness. For a moment, Marshall thought she might bolt or worse, react with a cub's instinctive violence. Instead, she pressed closer. Her clawed hands each nailed the length of Marshall's thumb, gripping his shirt with surprising gentleness. "Bad dreams," she whimpered in heavily accented standard. "Dark things, chasing." Marshall's xenobiology training ward with simple human compassion. Technically, he should contact her parents immediately. Technically, he should maintain professional distance. Technically, interacting unsupervised with a child of a species that could accidentally kill him with a startled reflex was probably against several regulations. But she was scared, and she was a kid. "I get those too sometimes," Marshall said quietly, slowly reaching out to pat her shoulder. Her fur was incredibly soft beneath his palm. "The dark things can't get you here. You're safe." Zara's trembling gradually subsided. "You're not afraid?" she asked, her voice small. "A little," Marshall admitted honestly. "But mostly, I'm glad you came to find someone when you were scared." That was brave. Something in his tone must have resonated. Zara's grip loosened slightly, though she didn't let go. "Mother says humans are strange, soft, breakable. We are pretty breakable," Marshall agreed with a slight smile. "But we're good at making friends. And friends help each other with nightmares." Friends. The concept seemed to puzzle her. "Sure, you want to be friends." Zira considered this with a seriousness only a child could muster. "Krath cubs don't have friends. We have packmates, rivals, eventually, we have subordinates." "Well," Marshall said, adjusting his pillow so they could both be more comfortable, "humans have friends. People we care about who aren't family. People we choose to be close to." "I choose you?" Zira asked, wonder creeping into her voice. "If you want." She thought about this for a long moment, then nodded against his shoulder. "I choose you. You smell like the teaching gardens on the station. Like growing things." Marshall chuckled softly. "I work with plants sometimes. And animals." "Tell me about animals," Zira demanded, her fear apparently forgotten in the face of curiosity. "Earth animals." So Marshall did. He told her about dogs who protected their humans, about cats who chose their own paths, about horses strong enough to carry people but gentle enough to trust. He described wolves that hunted in coordinated packs and elephants that mourned their dead. His voice was low and soothing, and somewhere during the tail of a pod of dolphins that had protected swimmers from sharks. Zira's breathing deepened into sleep. Marshall should have moved, should have called someone. Instead, he felt the weight of the small predator cuddled against him and made a different choice. He pulled the blanket over both of them and let himself drift off. Dawn on the station was artificial, a gradual brightening of corridor lights to simulate planetary cycles. Marshall woke to voices outside his door. Urgent voices. Security says she accessed this section. If anything has happened to my daughter. The door chimed. Then, when Marshall didn't immediately respond, it overrode and slid open. Ambassador Krell and his mate Shira filled the doorway. Behind them, Ana Rodriguez, the human diplomatic attaché, looked simultaneously terrified and ready to tackle the situation with words alone. She'd been briefing Marshall just yesterday about the importance of not creating an interstellar incident. All three froze at the sight before them. Marshall, very slowly, raised one finger to his lips in a universal gesture for quiet. Zero was still asleep, her head on his chest, one clawed hand tangled in his shirt. In sleep, she looked impossibly small and vulnerable, not like the child of apex predators, but simply like a child. She had a nightmare, Marshall whispered carefully. She was scared. I didn't want to wake you in the middle of the night for something I thought I could handle. The silence stretched. Anna's hand moved subtly to her cum unit, ready to call for help if the situation went sideways. Then Shira made a sound, a low rumble that Marshall's translator struggled with before settling on relieved amusement. She moved forward with surprising grace for her size, gently scooping up her daughter. Zero mumbled in protest but didn't wake. On our world, Ambassador Krell said slowly, his deep voice carefully controlled, the young are taught that weakness is death. That fear must be conquered alone. His amber eyes fixed on Marshall. You could have rejected her. You could have called us immediately. You could have been harmed if she'd startled awake. Yes, sir, Marshall acknowledged. But you didn't. No, sir. She was scared. And she's just a kid. Krell's expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, he placed one massive hand on Marshall's shoulder. His claws were retracted, Marshall noted with relief. The galaxy fears the Krath, the ambassador said quietly. But we fear what we might lose if we forget how to be gentle. Thank you, Marshal Chen, for reminding us. He paused. And for being the kind of foolish that humans seem to specialize in, the kind that chooses compassion over common sense. Anna let out a breath she'd apparently been holding since entering the room. So we're not having an interstellar incident? No, Shira said, adjusting her daughter in her arms. We are making a friend. She looked at Marshall with something that might have been respect. Zero chose well. As the Krath family departed, Zero briefly opened her eyes. Marshall, I had good dreams after. About the dolphins. Glad to hear it, kid. Come find me if you have more bad ones. Okay, friend. After they left, Anna collapsed against the doorframe. Marshall, you insane, wonderful idiot. Do you have any idea what you just did? Probably violated about 17 protocols. Probably saved this entire diplomatic mission. The Krath respects strength, but they revere those who protect their young. You just became untouchable in their culture. She shook her head in disbelief. Only a human would cuddle with an apex predator's child and somehow make it work. Marshall grinned tiredly. It's what we do. We're the species that made friends with wolves and turned them into We were always going to be weird about this stuff. HFY, indeed, Anna muttered. Humanity, fuck yeah, we'll befriend anything. Looking out at the stars beyond his viewport, Marshall had to agree. Maybe that was humanity's real superpower, not their endurance or adaptability or stubborn refusal to quit. Maybe it was simply this, the choice to see a scared child instead of a dangerous predator, and to offer comfort despite the risk. It wasn't logical. It wasn't safe. It was profoundly, uniquely human. And maybe that was exactly what the galaxy needed.